Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Match gameplay. This time around, we are playing as the Vampire Counts against the forces of the Beastmen on the Sulphur River map. So, as you can immediately see here, we are going to be struck by Vanguard, so I'm going to pause things for a little bit just as I run through my list and what I was thinking as we were starting. So I did bring Vlad. You can see he's here as my lord, good old Vladdy Daddy, marching straight into the front. Obviously very tanky lord, coming pretty stripped down to the bare minimum here. Raise Dead, Invocation of the Heck, Blood Drinker of course for that regen, and then of course Master Beguilement because it's a great debuff just to keep things alive for a little longer. He is alongside a Corpse Guard, just the vanilla variant, providing Figure Mortis, which is plus 5 melee defense and melee attack aura for 250 gold. That's really solid. And of course the Corpse Guard is a good distraction for enemy fire oftentimes. Up in the sky, I do have a Vampire of Shadows. She is providing further support, providing Malkos Mystify Miasma. She is providing Smoke and Mirrors, and this is to shut down what I think is one of the biggest threats for Vampire counts, and that is Centaurs with throwing axes. They're kind of difficult to shut down. They're difficult to snare with zombies or tie down that way. Malkos Mystify Miasma, though, combined with the Chillgeist I have over here, allows me to slow them by 24%, speeds up my Chillgeist by 12%. Once the Chillgeists are on top of them, they're being slowed by 36% due to the Frozen Aura, which means the Chillgeist with the Dyro pack here can annihilate Centaurs with throwing axes. And this is really kind of what this Wombo combo is here for. Vampire Shadow also does have Enfeebling Foe to weaken specific targets, make life a little easier for me if I have some really troublesome target to deal with. Frontline is a mix of Graveguard on the flanks, Graveguard with great weapons towards the center, and then everything is anchored by the Sternsmen. A decent enough unit. They do have regen, though they're obviously just a vanilla Graveguard, which means that they don't have armor piercing. But nonetheless, unless my opponent brought a massive Bestigors, this sort of frontline is able to outtrade basically anything the Beastmen bring in the infantry department. The biggest problem is obviously monstrous troops, and for that I don't have too many tools, but I do have a few. Obviously, Chillgeist and Dire Pack are on one flank, and these guys can deal with most large and monstrous infantry the Beastmen might bring, including the armored types like the Gorbel. I do have Black Knights with Lances and Barding, who can do okay damage against Minotaurs, who of course are pretty squishy. And then out on the flank, we do have a single unit Feaster in the Dusk, ready to kind of zone away any wannabe flankers. For my opponent's build, obviously Vanguard, which definitely caught me by surprise. At a very heavy front, a very massive front line. You can see the ratio is almost 2 to 1. My opponent did bring a mix of Goreherd with shields as well as Ungorherd, so interchanging. Ungors, of course, are kind of potato tier infantry who are just there to tie me down. They're expendable and all that. Goreherd with shields, much more competent in melee, though these guys are not the more damage-oriented dual-wielding variant, which I think was a little bit of a mistake on my opponent's part. I think you're better off dropping the shields against the undead, but we'll see how they work out. Out on the flanks of my opponent's main AP force, he does have Centaurs with great weapons as well as Chaos Warhounds with poison on either end, and these guys can outtrade, say, a unit of Black Knights if they can get into melee with them. In the back, my opponent does have a unit of Chaos Spawn just to provide support. Obviously, Chaos Spawn are okay against undead who don't have missiles, and they do provide poison support because that's the niche for the Beastmen variant of Chaos Spawn. Whereas if you bring the Chaos variant, those guys do not have they don't have poison. They just have higher weapon strength. My opponent also does have Gorbel here, coming in with a few little perks. It's very rare to see Gorbel, so I don't even remember them off the top of my head. Slaughter Skull, which is a good AoE buff. Banner of Fallen Kings, which is a good self buff, and then Deadly Onslaught, which of course we all know and love for the damage output boost it can provide. And then of course Morgr, once again pretty bare bones, much like my Vlad, coming in with just his 2 casts of Chaos Spawn. So as you can see, lines are going to close rather quickly. You can see the Graveguard here pushing straight in. I make a bit of a mistake here because obviously all my units were grouped, so they're actually engaging in a somewhat suboptimal manner. I really need these Graveguard to get into these Ungors and these Graveguard to get into these Gors, but instead they're all going to pile into the center mob, which is a bit of a problem for me and definitely a mistake on my micro right off the bat. In the meantime, these Black Knights are going to engage on these Ungors. My opponent does try to kick things off with a charge here by the Cav, but the Warhounds get intercepted by the Feasters in the Dusk, who are going to take these guys to Pound Town. They're actually, in my opinion, Feasters in the Dusk are one of the hidden gems in the Vampire roster. Between stock, Vanguard, and decent melee stats against squishy targets, they can absolutely take units to Pound Town. You can see that with these poor Chaos Warhounds. Anytime in the front line, you can see the Black Knights with Lance and Barding piling in against these Ungors, slaughtering them on that charge. These guys don't have great melee stats, but they do have a very powerful charge bonus of 62. They basically are, or they're definitely crappier than Reichsguard, but with that charge bonus, they can definitely hit pretty hard. Anytime on the flanks, similar situation with the Chillgeist and the Dire Pack, just trying to buy some time for my Graveguard here to do some work on the front line, trying to slaughter the center, and before finally pulling away. I don't want the Dire Pack getting caught, and I do need to deal with this Cav, which is the biggest threat to my armored troops. Anytime the Vampire Shadows is kind of circling high above, and you can see here the Graveguard is engaging and just holding their own. I'm getting a zombie summon back here behind the Gore Herd, and of course the Gore Herd will collapse rather quickly. You can see the Gorbel does push through, and in the meantime on the flanks, big engagement going down. You can see Dire Pack dives in. Centaurs with great weapons are already taking quite a beating. Dire Pack is very potent against squishy units with large units, and they are being backed by the Black Knights and the Chill guys. So these guys are going to take these guys to Pound Town. Master Beguilement goes down the Centaurs, which means they're not going to be hitting very consistently, and these guys are going to get absolutely shredded. In the meantime, on the flanks, the Crypt Ghouls are trying to pursue the Hounds. Bit of a mistake on my part. They're going to get intercepted by the Centaurs on the charge, but then they will turn around and engage the Centaurs. And they're actually going to be able to engage, and believe it or not, the Feasters in the Dusk will be able to win that trade, or at least force the rout. Over here, the Gore Herd do collapse. You can see the Chaos Spawn, though, trashing the Graveguard. They're just very potent against those sorts of units, despite their high armor. And over here, the Gorbel is chasing the Corpse Cart, which has no real way of escaping, and I don't really have the tools to cover it, because I'm too busy over here dealing with Centaurs. The Hounds do rout, and I do get a flank charge here with the Vampire, which means that the Centaurs here are going to rout pretty quickly. They get hit by Malklaus Mystify Miasma, which, between all these debuffs, means they're down to 34 speed, even as the Mycav gets bumped up to over 100 in the case of the Chillgeists. And they're going to slaughter them and force a shatter there. Over in the pits, you can see the Graveguard just holding their own. This is definitely a bit of a mistake on my opponent's part. You can see these Ungors, Gores, 5 units tied down a single unit of Graveguard, where they really needed to be somewhere else, providing support on the flanks. Similarly here, 1 unit of Graveguard tying down a unit of Gores, and 2 units of Gores. And this really shows how powerful Graveguard. Honestly, Graveguard is one of the best units in the game for cost efficiency, and they're definitely paying their dues. Over here, I have unfortunately lost my Corpse Cart, and it's been replaced by a unit of Raging Chaos Spawn, another unit of Chaos Spawn here, and then more Chaos Spawn here. So my center here has been pincered. Vlad is getting beaten up, trying to fight and help his Graveguard hold their ground. But on the flanks, things are going much better. You can see the Chillgeists here slaughtering the Ungors, going to force a rout. Over in the back, Centaurs are going to actually buckle despite the fact that it looks like they're winning. And over here, I'm actually going to pull a bit of a sneaky maneuver here. I'm going to throw the Dire Pack into the fray against the Ungors, and then pincer them from the other flank with Black Knights. And by this method, I'm going to be able to break this unit and force them to rout. In the meantime, over here, the Chillgeists are going to shatter the Ungors. You can see back here, my opponent is still tied down, trying to deal with these Feasters, and you can see they actually make the Centaurs rout, because they do cause fear, and they just held out for long enough. So definitely a bit of a problem for my opponent. And I definitely think these guys are only 700 gold, and they've managed to outtrade about almost 1,500 gold worth of units there, or I've been trading with about 1,500 points worth of units. So definitely a good trade for me. Over here, the Gore Herd is going to buckle to Terror as the Chillgeists get a rear charge. Of course, that's one of the big niches, and this was one of the big reasons actually I brought the Chillgeists, except for catching enemy skirmishers, is the fact that Chillgeists also do cost Terror, and I don't have any other source of Terror in this army, so definitely a very solid choice, I think. Over here, the Hounds and the Black Knights are going to plow into these Gores, who are encircling these poor Graveguard. But of course, Liberation is coming. You can see these Graveguard on 135 kills. The Vampire does dive in, hits these Hounds with Malklaus Mystify Miasma. I did make a mistake here, accidentally overcasting it. Definitely was not necessary, but nonetheless, we will be able to drive these filthy Hounds off and chase them off. Anytime over here, the Hex Wraiths repeatedly charging the backs of these Gore Herd, forcing them to rout. On the flanks, these Crypt Ghouls will finally break, but not before laying a serious smackdown on these Centaurs. And I actually do believe the Centaurs here will rout once more as they try to pull away for a cycle charge. They're actually going to break one more time to the Feasters before the Feasters finally do disintegrate. So these guys have definitely paid their dues, done a great job, definitely tied up a lot of my opponent's resources. Over here, Chillgeists still doing a great job against the Ungors. You can see the Graveguard is getting beaten down. The Chaos Spawn are not bad against them, just because they have very high weapon strength, and Graveguard does not have perfect armor. It's only 90, so good, but not flawless. Over here, the Graveguard, though, did manage, with the help of the Cav, did manage to buckle all of these troops. You can see these Hounds have shattered. A lot of these units are broken and in very bad shape. And my opponent's army is definitely not doing great. Unfortunately, I make a bit of a mistake here with the Dire Pack. Send it in against the Gore Herd and trying to pursue them off the field, and they're actually going to get caught by these Gores and slaughtered. Over here, though, the Black Knights are coming back to help the Graveguard, help their brethren. You can see Vlad here sliding out with the Gorbel, and of course, this looks like a pretty uneven matchup, but this is Vlad. Karstein Ring or no, he is great. He's one of the greatest duelists, and he is laying down laying the smackdown on this Gorbel. In the meantime, you can see the Hex Wraiths coming in for a charge. Not entirely sure how glorious this will be. You guys don't have much mass, but you can see they are going to plow in, and definitely going to start terrifying these guys. You can see these Gors want none of it. And actually the Gorbel, which doesn't have ideal melee defense, is going to suffer. And I do hit it here with an enfeebling foe, so it's going to be an even easier target for the Hex Wraiths, who of course do have armor piercing, so that 100 armor might as well be paper mache. Over here, Morgar is still holding his ground, and a lot of units are rallying, but unfortunately for my opponent, I still do have a solid enough core of Graveguard. I could still I do have still a tiny bit of magic that I might be able to scrounge up another Invocation of Nag from, and I'm able to kind of start ratting these units off. And my opponent just doesn't have the power anymore to overwhelm this armored blob. I do still have those Chill Geists. The Hounds do terror out, despite trying to get a rear charge in there, and the Gorbel is finally going to break as well. And with the Gorbel gone, my opponent is down to some of the just a bunch of trash infantry. You can see the Centaurs are actually here, forgotten about, but on 13 miles, they're not about to make a difference anyway. And things are going to end here with a charge on that Gorbel and a total shatter. So definitely a fun game. I think a few lessons here that I would like to note on, and not meaning to. I don't intend to put my opponent down here or mock his build, but there are a few little criticisms and a few little reminders I think that I should mention. First, if you're playing as from the Vampire account perspective, I do think this is a pretty decent build against the Beastmen. You basically have a decent counter to just about everything, from Bestigors to Minotaurs. Minotaurs are one of the iffy things that could cause you some trouble, but honestly, the Feasters in the Dusk, Black Knights, and Dire Pack are okay against Minotaurs. You could try to cut some corners somewhere, maybe even leave the Vampire on foot, and try to get some skeleton spears in there. But honestly, even against Minotaurs, this build will do okay. Against anything else the Beastmen put up on the field, you basically have a counter. If the Gorbels, you have the armor piercing and power of the Chill Guys, Vlad being a decent duelist himself. Dire Pack, of course, helps you shut down Centaurs. You do have the Chill Guys to shut down Centaurs. And, of course, Graveguard just outtrades any infantry that the Beastmen put on the field, except for Bestigors. But for those, you do have the Graveguard with the Grey Weapons. And once again, those Chill Guys, such a flexible unit that can really work against just about everything. As far as my gameplay there went, I definitely think I made some mistakes, allowing the Corpse Guard to fall pretty uncontested, though I definitely didn't have the big enough army to kind of cover all my angles. I do think the Graveguard performed rather well. Obviously, they just held their ground and tanked like a bunch of champs. The Black Knights raking in 2 chevrons and almost 300 kills. Chill Geists over 150. And even the Dire Pack did some serious work, munching through those Centaurs and munching on some squishy units. So definitely, I think I was pretty pleased with this build, and of course, the Vampire Shadow is providing some valuable debuffs, and that's really, I've been having more and more appreciation for lore of Shadows. I think it's actually an amazing lore, and do think it's pretty worthwhile. Now, for my opponent's build, I do have a few criticisms that I think or critiques. One, if you're going against undead, always bring some source of magic damage. This is true for basically any faction you are playing. The Beastmen don't have any natural magic damage, or melee or ranged magic damage. I do believe the Cygor used to, but no longer does. And otherwise, the only other source they had was one of the regiments of Renown. I do believe the Centaur Regiment of Renown, but they don't have that at the moment. So you do want to bring some magic. I personally recommend Devolve, but Flock of Doom, Fate of Buna, something like that, can give you the power you need to deal with Cairn Wraiths, Hex Wraiths, and units like that, which can otherwise really shut you down. I also don't think Gore Herd with shields is worthwhile. I think dual wheel, even if you're going for Vanguard, you're better off going with a smaller infantry contingent and a much heavier cavalry contingent. I personally don't think Vanguard is really that valuable against vampires to begin with, because vampires are trying to get up in your face. You're basically just playing to what they want anyway. I personally think you're better off going with a more conventional build, but nonetheless, I do think Goreherd and more normal Goreherd and more Centaurs is the way to go. Perhaps some Centaurs with throwing axes just to pressure the backline. Obviously, I did bring some counters here, but you can obviously, there's more counterplay you can bring if you bring magic. There's counters you can do otherwise. Chaos Spawn did surprisingly great. I was definitely impressed. 100 kills against Graveyard is nothing to sneeze at. I was actually pretty shocked. Perhaps some of this was against zombies, so I'm not entirely sure, but nonetheless, I was definitely surprised by this kill count. Morgar and the Gorbel did not have a good time of it, though. The Gorbel, I guess, was focused on single targets, but they definitely struggled a bit, I think. And I definitely would suggest a different infantry composition. You're just going with the standard Gors, getting those Centaurs in there, and bringing a caster of some sort. Probably dropping the Gorbel in favor of that. Nonetheless, I did want to demonstrate this. I did want to show this build. I did want to show how powerful cavalry can be, again, when used properly. Some combos you can do between different vampire units, and yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you found it informative, and I hope you liked it. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions, or anything like that, be sure to share them down below, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye for now.